Hello and welcome. My name is Nick Dreesen. I am the president and founder of Families United Action Network, and we have started a segment called Meet the Candidate, where we are trying to set up some Zoom meetings. We had actually sent out a candidate questionnaire to all the candidates, and some of them either filled that out or sent in a video submission. But today we have been blessed to be joined by CJ Petersen, who is running for Senate District 6. Take time out of his day to join us. And that is an open seat. It was attended by Republican Mark Sagabart. But CJ, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you chose to step up and run?
Yeah, so thank you very much for the introduction there. And I actually grew up in Atlantic, Iowa, which is about an hour from where I live now in Templeton. And really one of the things that really spurred me to run was wanting to make sure that Iowa is a welcoming place for all families and all children, and all of the people who love those families and children. And so that's been very important to me growing up. I grew up with divorced parents, and that was a formative experience for me. And so I think, I really learned the values of community and family from not just the folks who lived in my home, but also the folks who were our neighbors and who were our relatives who lived in nearby towns and things of that nature. So I think it does take not just two parents to raise a child. It takes that there are lots of different types of families, and I think that's something that we lose sight of a little bit in these times. And so decided to run for the Iowa Senate. I've got a homecomers initiative, which I've been running on pretty strongly the last few months here, talking about business succession and reinvesting in rural Iowa, which is of course I think the best place in the world to raise a family. So thank you again for having me on, and I appreciate you taking the time as well. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Now, CJ, for those who want to learn more about you, if they want to donate to your campaign or to get involved, how would they get a hold of you? Do you have a website?
Yes, so my website is actually CJ for Iowa. That's FOR Iowa.com. So CJFOR Iowa.com. And, if you can take a look at my Homecomers initiative I was just talking about, learn a little bit about me. Contribute if you want. We've got about 12 days left. I don't know. I don't know how much more we're going to be. You can only pack so much money into ad buys and things, but but definitely appreciate anybody who takes a look and.
Okay. Well, Families United Action Network, our mission is to preserve and protect children and families through repairing current organizations and structures, and by creating solid foundations for Iowa's families and the next generations. Now, we do not endorse any candidates. This is just a chance to get to know them, ask them some questions, and again, wanted to make sure that if you wanted to get involved, that you knew how, and that would be at cjforiowa.com, and that is FOR. CJ, to get started, you mentioned already in your opening statements there that you do have some experience, a child of divorce. Do you have any other background with this or any other opening comments when dealing just with family law reform and the family divisions?
So I did mention in the first time we talked, I think, Nick, my my childhood was kind of marked by a struggle between two parents, who were oftentimes at odds with one another. And I can testify firsthand how that impacts a child's psyche, and it impacts when we take the well-being of a child out of the hands of the parents and we kind of place it with a maybe an arbitrary decider, quote unquote, whether they're a government bureaucrat or a judge or what have you. I've seen some of the negative ramifications of that. I think sometimes certain individuals who make those decisions or make decisions about the well-being of a child, or where child placement, or where a child, how much time a parent has with a child, decisions get made in kind of an arbitrary basis that isn't really fair, and it's kind of a case by case thing. You have to kind of hope you get a person who is sympathetic to you or your particular situation, which isn't very fair either. That's not very equal across the board. So I definitely am happy to be here tonight and speak about these issues.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, CJ, when we deal with these kind of cases, CPS or custodial divisions, the court likes to use the best interest of the child standard, but there really is no definition of the best interest of the child. So it's kind of, somewhat up to the judge's mood that day. I guess if you were to define in the best interest of the child, how would you define that? And also, how would you define in the best interest of the family? And would there be any major significant differences there?
Yeah, so I think any child needs to be nurtured and loved by if at all possible, a child. I think the best interest of the child, number one, starts with the child knowing and having relationships with people who are relatives or who are blood relatives, whether it be grandparents, uncles, cousins, parents, the actual parents, and I think that's the starting point. The goal should be to keep a child with their family, because that family foundation is really all that people have starting off in life, especially in a situation like this where that child is probably already going to be economically disadvantaged. You want to make sure that they have some kind of foundation, and that requires them to be part of the family. So I think that's got to be the first part. The second, of course, you want to make sure the child is safe, taken care of. Nutrition is accounted for, education, housing. Do they have a roof over their head? That is the home clean and sanitary, and is there do they have adequate an adequate place to sleep, and are they being minded after, are they brushing their teeth, all those things kind of come together. So I think that the best interest of the child can be subjective, but I think there are definitely some objective standards we can apply, and maybe we can take some of the subjectivity out of it. So now moving on to the second portion of the question there, which was the best interest of the family. I think parents benefit from having their children around too. I mean, I don't think that the needs of the child are necessarily mutually exclusive from the needs of the family at large, and really recognizing that the family unit, whether it's two parents or one parent and a step parent, or however these things end up playing out. I think the family unit, I think we all do better when we all do better. So I think you can't sever the two from one another. And that's just my view.
Okay, and that's kind of the point we were driving at is with this, is that they do overlap quite a bit, and that it is not just one facet of everything there. So moving along, when dealing with the judiciary is one aspect of the government, and the Department of Human Services, especially the Child Protective Service Division, is its own, division. But when dealing with the judicial branch and with Child Protective Services, would you be in favor of more oversight and accountability?
I think the answer to that is definitely yes. I can speak to this from experience, and I say this as someone who has all the love and respect and adoration of my mother in the world. But when my parents went to decide who was going to have what time with my brother and me after the divorce, it's very clear that the judge who made the decision in that case, in that proceeding, just kind of gave my mother everything, which I am very happy with both of my parents. I don't dislike either of them, but it kind of puts the child in an impossible situation where I got to see my dad every other weekend, and my dad lived in Des Moines, and we lived in Atlantic, and it was an hour drive in between, and there was really not a lot of equity there between being able to spend time with both parents. And so I think was that one of those situations where it's more subjective based on, the judge's opinion, or the mood of the judge, or I don't know. I mean, my dad was a fit parent just as much as my mom was. And, the same thing happened a few years later when they went to custody court again. And it's a process. And so I think definitely there needs to be, maybe, some kind of review commission or oversight commission, maybe a civilian, kind of a civil review board type situation or scenario where we oversee these agencies and the judiciary as well, because, this is way too important to leave up to, one person to decide, and then that's a final decision.
Okay. And now you mentioned equity. Would you say that there is a monetary value that kind of feeds into this that makes this whole process a little bit harder in the way that it is right now?
I think that oftentimes I think that there are certain there may be certain monetary benefits there for different stakeholders in this process, whether it's the agencies themselves, or foster parents who may or may not benefit from state assistance, and they want to maintain care of the child for longer. I don't know. I'm not making any kind of accusations to that effect. I'm just saying I could see where the system can be abused, and I think anytime there is potential for abuse, we need to have oversight. That's kind of where I am.
Okay. And that's definitely one aspect of where I was going with that. Another road to just throw out there would be even the single parents now that go after the child support to try and minimize the time, access the time with the child, just to be able to get more child support, or even the attorneys who string things along longer than they need to be in order to get monetized that as much as
I've got friends who I have a friend who has been literally jailed because he lost his job and couldn't pay child support. They threw him in jail, took away his driver's license. There are just all these things that it's like you're kind of damned if you do, but you're damned if you don't, and you can't get out from under that situation where parenting is not just a transactional money situation, in my view. And I say that as someone who my partner Luke and I are a same-sex couple, and we hope to adopt children someday. And so to me, it's not just about the money. It's about the value that you can the kind of life you can provide for your child, by virtue of the relationship you have with that child and the values that you teach them. So it just kind of blows my mind sometimes. That's all I'll say.
Now, your friend and others like him who have been put in jail for falling behind on child support, do you believe that type of system is in the best interest of the child, to put their parents behind bars for those situations?
Well, we teach kids that people who go to jail are bad, right? So that inherently creates a situation where that child believes that maybe their parents are bad, and I just it just and again it creates, it's a self-fulfilling problem, right? Because if you're in jail or you don't have a driver's license, how are you supposed to go to work and fulfill the obligations that the court has put before you? That doesn't mean that responsibility should be abdicated. That means that we need to recognize that parenting is about more than just paying $500 a month or whatever it is. I know when my parents first were divorced, it was 200 and something a month, and then when I was in high school, starting to learn how to drive and everything, somehow someone from CPS called my mom and said, hey, you need to do a review of your child support, because my dad's income had increased over the 15 years, and then all of a sudden it went from $280 a month to over $900 a month, and which is and again, this is just one of those issues where I think that conventional wisdom would be that a candidate who is more center left would maybe not be in favor of some of these reforms or some of these oversight interests, I think personal experience does come into play here, and I definitely, this is something that we have talked about. My dad and I have talked about many times over the years, and um, so it's just one of those things. So, and I know I'm kind of going on and taking up all of your time, but
No, this is actually exactly what we want. Because again, normally we'd come to you, we'd sit down, we'd have coffee, we'd get to have a conversation, but that also wouldn't
right.
be able to get shared with the voters. And we really want to get to know the real you, let you know us and what we're really fighting about. And it's really good to know when it's more relatable and you understand us, how far
Mhm.
we have to explain. So the part there about the we teach children that those who are in jail are bad people. When they have a parent go there, that it not only makes them have mixed feelings about their parent, but usually, almost always, it would also give them mixed feelings about themselves, as they are made up of two people, mom and dad, and that is how that's their definition is, if they're bad, then I must be at least half bad as well, and therefore there can
Mhm.
create many other spiraling problems as
Well,
well.
and it creates social problems for the child. It can cause the child's, if it's a small town like Templeton here. I mean, there are 350 people here. Dad's in jail. Word's going to get around, and the kids on the school bus are going to talk about it. And kids listen to what their parents say about what's going on in town. I mean, those kinds of things have a ripple effect, and those kinds of things also don't just go away just when dad gets out of jail or mom gets out of jail for for that particular issue. you know the child's memory doesn't just wipe clean like a hard drive. There's that continued, um I guess, and I don't want to say scarring, but it's similar to that. It does continue.
Yeah, and they found that the largest cause of PTSD is family separation. And so when whether it be CPS or even just divorce or custodial division, oftentimes many children and both of the parents themselves are susceptible to it. It can grow very exponentially. And obviously not all relationships are going to work out. Some of them were never full relationships to begin with. There's also parents who do not recognize the honor and blessing that they have and do not live up to those duties that come with that. But that does not mean that our process that we are dealing with is the way that it should be either, and that we can't make life better and easier for everybody. So I'm going to skip one of the questions. It was going to be one of our last ones, but you kind of already brought it up, and I believe you already answered. But do you feel that taking professional license or driver's licenses is a fair deterrent, or is there a better way that we should be going about the driver's licenses, or deterring people to pay their child support?
Well, I mean, I just think it's contradictory to what we actually want to accomplish. So, I mean, we do the same thing with folks who have unpaid parking tickets. It's one of those things where, you know, people in Iowa, we don't have a lot of public transportation here, and folks need to be able to get to work, and we can set up payment plans. I mean, there are tons of there are lots of different options that can be done that don't interfere with the person's freedom of movement or ability to get to their job. So I would say no, I don't support that.
Okay. So we've had a couple different bills that were actually, there was three different versions that we got introduced this last year, but we're still looking on a full vehicle to, there are some federal guidelines that the state does have to comply with, but there are parameters and some wiggle room. So that's something we will continue to work on. And if you were to get elected, I'm sure we will be, circling back to talk with you more about that, possibly even as a potential sponsor. Now, when there are those situations where the system does need to step in, if the child's at risk, there is endangerment involved, what, if any, situation do you feel that the parents should permanently lose their rights? Do you feel that that process is already working right, or should we be setting more paths to family reunification and family services?
Well, I mean, as I said in the beginning, I think the most important thing that we can do is make sure that a child is has a family, and whether that's mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever. But I think the goal should always be family unification rather than separation. And you know you can go through a lot with somebody that you love and care about, but it doesn't mean that you should never have contact with them again, and if you're severing that bond with between a parent and a child, there better be a damn good reason behind it. And so I don't have all of the answers. That doesn't just because now if someone's an alcoholic or a drug addict, does that mean that they should never have the chance at rehabilitation? I don't believe that. I'm a recovering alcoholic myself, and um, I don't think that that's cause for me not to be able to raise a child now, 3 years sober. But of course, maybe if the parent harmed the child and there was, irrefutable, no reasonable doubt that, that the parent did cause the harm to the child. I mean, there are situations. I think that I'd have to look more at the specifics of that, and that's where an organization like Families United Action Network can be a great resource, I'm sure, and we can take a look at that.
Yeah, thank you. And also kudos to you on maybe on your recovery there. That's not easy, and I understand that's a daily challenge. So again, kudos to you. When dealing with the Department of Child Protective Services, would you be in favor or against an audit?
Oh, I think I'm always in favor of auditing how state agencies are doing their job. So I'd be in favor of an audit of child recovery.
Okay. Now we sent you one of our bills. It's a kind of a 30-page sum bill, and I don't expect that you've had full time to digest it, but it was, we've currently lost our sponsor in the Senate for it because that was actually in your district. It was Senator Mark Sagabar. The premise of this bill would be to take the Department of Child Protective Services out of the Department of Human Services umbrella, kind of like they did with the Department of Correctional Facilities back in the 80s. And it's not increasing government and it's not privatizing it. It's just separating those powers to make sure that the budget can be used instead of getting lost in the general funds, to ensure that we have proper oversight and to ensure that we can be truly providing services and not just offering services. Now, obviously, there's a lot to digest in that bill, and I'm sure you'd have to look at the verbiage, but just
Right.
on the general premise of it, does that seem like something that you would support? And if the details are right, even gladiate and champion, but be a sponsor on a bill like that?
Well, yeah, and I think Senate District 6 has been a leader on the issue. No reason we can't continue that trend. And so, I'd have to look at the line items specifically. Maybe maybe there are line items that I wouldn't support, and we can hash those out. Of course, legislative language is complicated and tricky, and but I definitely I could see myself getting behind something to that nature.
Wonderful. Okay. And so for those of you watching, that would be Senate File 2325. And they also had a companion bill introduced in the House by Representative Jeff Shipley of HF 2471, if anybody wanted to research on those. Again, we are talking with CJ Petersen. You can find out more about him at CJ4FOR Iowa, IOWA.com, CJ4Iowa.com. Again, we are Families United Action Network, and you can find out about us at familiesunite.org. Now, CJ, if you could please explain what you would do to correct parental rights and to maximize parenting time.
Yeah. So did you say correct parental rights?
Please explain what you would do to protect parental rights and maximize parenting time.
Yeah. So I think parental rights are extraordinarily important. I think if you have a child who is for example being um, this is one of those things where I remember, in school we had to have permission to take a sex ed class. I don't think there's anything wrong with a parent being able to say, no, I don't want my child to be part of this particular, curriculum, in school. I think those rights are important for parents as you're raising your children, and things of that nature. I think to maximizing parental parenting time, I think that the goal should be equal time between parents. I think I could have done better with, more time with my dad growing up. I think a lot of kids who, maybe they're with their dad the majority of the time right now could do better with their mom more, and so I think to whatever extent it's possible based on the geographic locations there, where folks are living. But I think the goal should be as equal as possible, that so long as it makes sense and kind of keeps the child with a routine, so. But I think in most scenarios, parents can kind of work that out together too. I think too often, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the time, parents get kind of shut out of that process, and it's kind of arbitrarily set up by a third party who, is maybe looking at a sheet of paper but doesn't really know the parties involved and
Yeah.
doesn't know the child.
There's nothing to stop them from being able to be adults and come up with an agreement themselves and to go to a judge to sign off on it. And that's what we would ideally love to be seeing, is people to come to their own agreements. That's usually going to be best with their schedule, best with their finances, best for the truly best for their family and child. Now, CJ, I believe you've answered this question in a number of different times in a number of different ways with the same answer. Should a child have access to both parents as long as both parents are fit, willing, and able? Why or why not?
100%, because those are their parents, and that's about all I have to say about that.
Okay. Would there be circumstances, obviously there's things that would fall into not being fit, being willing, being able. Would there be any other situation where they should be denied? Should distance be a factor or allowed, or should we be changing our school systems, or making people live closer together? What would be factors where that would not be 50-50?
Well, I think that gets a little bit complicated. I mean, it's not so common anymore, but well, I mean, maybe it's more common now than it used to be. But I think that there should definitely be some kind of recourse available if dad lives in Des Moines and mom decides to move to San Francisco. There should be some kind of recourse or responsibility on the part of the parent who's moving away with the child. Because I mean, you're not just uprooting the child from the parent, you're also uprooting the child from their social environment, and it's a complicated scenario. But I mean, if you get into a position where you have more equity between the two parents, then that's maybe not such an issue. Right now I think we have a situation where dad could decide to up and move with the kid all the way to Seattle, and mom can't do anything about it, and it's just one of those things where, is that in the best interest of the child? I mean, not likely. This is in the best interest of the family. Well, which side of the family? I mean, and so that's one of those things where then it's not objective anymore, it becomes subjective. And the role of government should strive, I think, this is my philosophy, should always strive to be as objective as possible. That way we're not, instituting our own personal biases or I mean, we're all human, we all make errors, and you'd hate to see one child get hurt or killed or have a problem, something that detrimentally impacts the child because the system didn't work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so. And so it sounds like you would agree too that if a parent is fit on the every other weekend and Wednesdays, which is kind of the standard model we see right now, that if they're fit on the weekends, that they are generally probably a fit parent, and if they're willing, they should be having 50-50 if they're willing.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
And do you feel that currently our system, as I just mentioned, that every other weekend and the Wednesdays is the standard plan, do you feel that we are kind of are stuck in a rather kind of a cookie cutter model, or do you feel that the court really does look at the individual needs of each family and it kind of maximize that time up to give them more time or to be more flexible, or are we in a cookie cutter?
I think you have to it's difficult because the cookie cutter model has its flaws, and just leaving it up to an arbitrator or a judge kind of has its flaws too. So I'd say that's something that deserves some real thought and some study, and not just from the perspective of you know angry divorce lawyers who want to make extra money by billing more hours in court.
Okay. Now, the other bill that we had sent you information on has been introduced for a number of years. It's usually been by Senator Brad Zahn. It was introduced in the House this year by Representative Annie Osmondson. The bill number on that one was Senate File 571. That is what we call a child's rights are fundamental, or the shared parenting bill. What this does is it would take the current language, but it would just add in clear and convincing evidence and a starting point of 50-50. So instead of assuming one parent is better than the other and we're going to reduce them down to that visitor, that we would start at 50-50. And if there's any reason at all, even I don't like the watch that you're wearing, that I can go ahead and take you to court. Now, hopefully an ethical attorney would stop the bad watch case, and that a judge would definitely throw out those frivolous cases and result back to the 50-50, unless there was something that was actually going to harm or put the child in danger. And this would also then again take it to the clear and convincing standard. When the Supreme Court says that a child or parents' right over their child, it should be protected with the highest standard of proof. That would be beyond reasonable doubt. Currently, we have a preponderance of evidence, which is whoever can tell the best story. It's an affidavit process. There is no verification of any evidence. So we're just taking it one step higher to clear and convincing, and saying, if you're going to say that bad watch is going to put the child in danger, that you have to be able to show evidence as to why and to prove your case, rather than just, let's face it, if you're getting divorced or having a separation, it's not because you love each other so much. There's argument, there's animosity, there's a situation, and it often becomes the ugliest War of the Roses type situation when it doesn't need to be that way. So that was a little easier bill to look at. Did you have time to study that one?
Yeah, so I think I could support that. I mean, I would be happy to come on as a co-sponsor if I'm elected and fortunate to serve. I think it's something that should deserve bipartisan support. I don't think that parental rights or a starting point. I don't think clear and convincing evidence is anything that. I think if there is evidence that a parent is unfit, or their time with their child should be reduced, there should be clear and convincing evidence, and there's no problem with codifying that.
Okay, wonderful. And if elected, we will definitely be circling back with you on that and these other topics. Again, this is CJ Petersen in Senate District 6. His website is CJ4Iowa. That's FOR, CJ4Iowa.com. And CJ, the last real question on our survey here: what importance do you feel a stable family environment has on affecting other facets of society, such as the economy, the environment, foreign policy, etc.?
I think this is one of those moments where I think back to I'm kind of a political nerd, and I remember in Ronald Reagan's farewell speech to the nation, he said, all great change in America begins around the dinner table. And he encouraged kids, if your parents aren't teaching you enough about, the country we're living in, what it means to be a good citizen, to tell them that President Reagan told them to nail them on it, And I think, I think encouraging families that are together and that are, homes that are not, quote unquote broken, or homes that are, that have, where children have relationship with both of their parents, or have relationships with their family members, whether they're, grandparents, uncles, aunts, all of those types of things. I think that's a very important starting point for a healthy society. I mean, the studies show that kids with, united families, or with families who, where they actually have a relationship with their families, are less likely to end up in doing poorly in school. They're less likely to drop out of school. They're less likely to get involved in crime. They're and all of those things trickle up into the broader, societal ills, as we call them. So I think it's always important to look at where it all starts, and generally it starts in the home. And now, does that mean that we're going to be able to fix everything by changing a couple words in the Iowa code? Absolutely not. I think a lot of what we have to do really is just going to be, centered around, the kinds of policies or the kinds of families we encourage. And that's going to take everybody, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or independent or, a member of the, Libertarian Party or wherever you stand politically. I don't think it matters. I think everybody benefits from a strong family unit, whether, but, and then that's not to discount any type of family. I grew up, mostly with a single mom. My mom was a good mom, is a good mom. And it doesn't mean that, families who are, where the grandmother is raising the child right now because the parents are having trouble, that doesn't mean that any family is less valued, less valuable. But I think that family unification has got to be the goal, because, large numbers and statistics, do bear that out. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, CJ, when it comes to you and your campaign, obviously, as you said, we only have 12 days left. So it's that final push. At this point in the game, what are you most in need of? Funds, volunteers, exposure, something else? What are you most in need of with your campaign in order to get to become the senator of Senate District 6 in Iowa?
Yeah, so I think really exposure. If you know somebody in Senate District 6, of course I'm clear-eyed about where I live. I happen to be a Democrat. I tend to be a fairly independent-minded Democrat, but I am formerly a Republican. I think most people who live out in rural Iowa have been Republicans or Democrats at different points of their lives, and I think that that's less important than the values we share. So, if you have relatives, friends, anybody who is watching this who live in Senate District 6, that's Crawford County, that's Sac County, Buena Vista, Audubon, and Carroll counties, let them know. There's a candidate out there who is pro, family unification, who wants to work on these issues, because it's not just about going to Des Moines and voting yes or no on a bottle bill. That's not the most important thing that we do. The family is the cornerstone of our society, and I think it's really important to recognize that you're going to need people in the caucuses on both sides of the aisle to get some of these things done, and that's what I endeavor to do. So I appreciate everyone's support. The most important thing we can do is gain exposure and let folks know that it's not just a Republican issue. It's a Democrat and Republican issue. It's an American issue, an Iowa issue, human issue.
Amen on that. Amen on that. So he's asking for your vote on here coming up in just 12 days. Again, that's CJ for Iowa at Senate District 6, and we thank you so much for taking the time out. We appreciate your bravery of anybody who's going to step up and try and help lead during these times, especially the times we're facing in the world today. It has been a pleasure to interview you and to hear your different views. You can always tell the difference between those who have read about it versus those who have lived it. And it's not something I'd say is good to see, but it is good to be able to relate and to know that that there's people, win or lose, that we're all in this together. We can all still come together as families united, whether split family or a nuclear family, and we can improve this world one piece at a time. So CJ, I appreciate your time. Do you have any final comments, any last words that you'd like to get out to the people tonight?
I just want to thank you again, Nick, for having me. And I wish I knew more about the work that your organization was doing before I was running for office. And that's one of the pleasures I have as a candidate. Whether I'm the next senator from the 6th district or not, I just have a feeling I'm a winner either way, because I get to meet folks like you and learn about all the important things that are going on around the state and around the country, and how our legislature can impact that. So once again, thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule. Again, for those who are interested in learning more about him, donating, volunteering, etc., go to cj4iowa.com, and that is FOR. And for those who are looking to find out more about us, you can go to familiesunite.org. Currently, if you go up to this part right here, it says Iowa Legislative Recommendations 2020. That gives you all the recommendations that we were pushing for this current last year, and you can push on any one of those and it will give you information about who supported those bills, what the I'll give you an example here. Protecting defenders. It's going to give you the general subject, section of the code, and all kinds of various information. You can also read more information, and of course, come here to sign up for our newsletter and to donate to Families United Action Network, as we are 100% volunteer organization. So those donations do help to keep our website up, allow us to host events, and to do other works to try and again help preserve and protect the children and families of Iowa. So again, CJ, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. Senate District 6, CJ for Iowa, and we are Families United Action Network. We appreciate you all. We love you all. Thank you and good night.